Hi, I'm Ben Pest. I'm here at DBS Music in Bristol today to give you a run through of my live sets workflow. I'm just going to go through the bits of kit one by one. So on these first two channels I've got the main out of the Octatrack. So I'm going to fade everything else down. So the Octatrack basically is 8 tracks, hence Octa, obviously. But those 8 tracks can be different things. So the 8 audio tracks can be, you could. I've seen people like DJ off them. Do you know what I mean? You could even just like use it to play whole tracks. But I'm not really into doing that. I'd rather just use CDJs if I'm going to DJ, quite honestly. That's just a personal thing. If I am using it in a live situation, I want to be doing something sort of live with the audio. So you can have it kind of like playing loops, obviously. You can get it playing like one-shot samples. And you can get it to kind of slice audio. Like this little bit here is like, if I play this to you. So those like random glitches you're hearing basically is like a piece of audio that's been sliced, and then the Octatrack has got this thing called re-trigger on it, which basically will repeat a portion of the sample. You're almost getting into sort of like granular territory with it really, because you can sort of you can change the rate of it as well. Yeah, so you get all that kind of glitchy stuff by like repeating like the beginning part of a sample. Or if you did that on a bass drum, you can kind of make the bass drum start rolling and stuff like that. But then on something like this where it's slicing it, it's obviously going to start repeating different slices in the sample, right? And so then you can assign this fancy crossfader thing. So basically, with the scenes, you can get it to kind of automate multiple parameters at once. And so that, when I turn that... What you can't see, basically, is it's changing like what slice number it's playing first and how many times it's repeating it, and then the rate of repeats, basically. But the scenes are just really powerful for like sliced material, basically. So I do that quite a lot. And you can see that the sliced stuff and the kind of processing goes on these 2 channels. So channel 3 is generally something that's like really mashed up piece of audio. And then 4 will be like extra effects. So I can have like this one is what's called a neighbour track. So it's literally taking the audio feed from this one and then processing it through extra effects. In this case, I think like an EQ and something called a... It's something called a Spacey Eliezer. It's basically, that's like a delay of sorts, but it's really like wide sort of delay. So 3 and 4 are my tracks for that, right? And then I always have my kind of kick will always be on 5. And the reason for that is when I'm changing between patterns, I know where the kick is, right? So I know it's always going to be on 5. I also know that something mid-rangey will always be on 6. So it could be a clap or something like that. In this case, it is a clap. And then 7 will always be like my tops, right? So like the basics of the drums are here basically. And I'm just in some like random place there from the sort of glitched audio thing. So yeah, 5, 6 and 7 are generally kind of like one-shot samples of drums or kind of short loops of drums. So I know where they are when I'm changing patterns, and I can like mute off the kick, for example, or mute off the claps or whatever I'm doing. And then on track 8, I have set up as a master channel. So what that means is basically you can have it as a setting whereby 8 is just doing master processing basically for everything that's coming out of the main out, right? So all these ones that are lit up here, these 6 channels are coming out the main out. And then 8 is just providing some extra, like, I think just EQ. And the other reason that that's useful is I've got a separate level for that. So then once I've come and built a load of patterns for the set, I can very easily like level the tracks, if you see what I mean. Because otherwise in the past, before I started using this as the master channel, basically I was finding that the bits and pieces that I was making were really like, you know, I'd go to one and be like, whoa, that's just really too loud. And so what that meant was going through each of the individual channels and like re-leveling them, or getting really like bogged down with, oh, I've made that one go down like 20, so I have to do minus 20 numbers on each of those channels. Whereas if I've got that as a master channel, I can just turn it down just by ear. I can match all the patterns, so it's much easier that way to do it, basically. So yeah, and then the other thing that's going on with this, which is worth mentioning at this point, so obviously you've got 8 audio channels or processing, and then you've also got 8 MIDI channels, which you can kind of flip with a button, and that's an 8-part MIDI sequencer as well, and that is where the O coast comes into play. So basically this thing is really great. I'm really pleased with it. This is like the latest addition to my set, and basically what I'm doing is I'm sending it MIDI from here, and then the audio is coming back in to the Octatrack, where I can like add effects and like do re-looping of it, right? So I'll just show you that very quickly. So what I wanted to do was to keep that on a separate channel. So when I'm performing, the O coast has got its own fader. It just kind of makes sense to me to do that. So that should be kicking out O. Let's just see if that's kicking out. Let me just take the vocal. Right, so and you can hear it's very kind of dry on its own, so I like to. So that's the other thing. So this is the other type of machine that you can have, is called a through machine, and it's exactly that. So yeah, the through machines are just like incoming audio, but then they also have the benefit of 2 effects as well, and LFOs and all of that kind of shizzle on the effects. So that's what's going on here. Just a splash of reverb, I find, with that sounds really nice a lot of the time.
What's that little one called again?
That's a no coast, or an O coast. It's a zero dash coast is what it's by Make Noise.
Right. Has that got its own sounds?
So that.
Or have you put sounds?
So basically, this. So this thing is a semi-modular synth, right? I mean, this is like, yeah, it doesn't have any of its own sounds,
It's
but
got a couple of oscillators and etc.
it's got one oscillator, but it's an additive synth, right?
Yeah.
Which is analog.
Right.
So yeah, so it's like a West Coast synthesis type synth. So it basically you can add odd and even harmonics to the fundamental, and then multiply them as well. So yeah, okay, let's talk about that then. So basically, this thing is a beast, actually. At the moment, I've got it doing something pretty funky, but it's what I've found with it actually is when I first got it, I was just making really simple sounds with it without any patching at all, because when you look down at it, you can see it's got like these gold arrows, and what they are is like the normaled connections. So without any patch cables, it's still got a patch, if you see what I mean. It's got a normaled patch. So basically, I just started making really simple sounds with it. And initially, you are sort of taken aback by the fact that it doesn't have a filter, right? I was like, this thing hasn't got a filter, and that's like messing with my mind a bit. But it's amazing how it gets around that by using the modulation of the sort of overtones, basically, to they kind of almost mimic slightly the sort of sounds of a filter. It's just making really simple basses with it, and like putting it in my tracks. And what I've found with it is, it just seems to, like, everything I do with it just seems to sit in the mix, right? And like lots of the time, I'll add processing to it, and I just like, actually it's just better with the processing off. Do you know what I mean? Because it just, especially the bass stuff, it just seems to sit there. But that was an additional. I really wanted to incorporate it into the set, and obviously that in itself is a bit of a how can I put this? It's just a bit of a head spin, really, because there is no presets or sound recall of any kind. Like, if you could have something going on and it's like, right, this is really sweet, and then you turn one dial a bit and another dial a bit, and it's gone forever. That's it, you know. It's like unforgiving in that way. So it's really good from a creative point of view, because it's just like record everything it does. Like, don't touch it, record it, sort of thing. But in terms of the live set, I was thinking, how can I do this? So what I've tried to do is make a patch that is as functional as it could be, without actually knowing what's going to come out on the night, sort of thing. So what I've done is like made a patch that's got. So here's how it works, right? So it's got two MIDI in channels, right, that are split into essentially CV and gate. So MIDI A, what I'll do is I'll actually make a new like MIDI pattern for it. Okay, so we'll just go in to one of these, and I'll just. Right, okay, so let's just have a look at what's going on. So basically, I'm going to take out all of this crap and try and explain it from the bass level. So right, basically, MIDI A will let you put in, like, if I put in a note here and I'll put in a different note here, let's just make it so it's 16 steps, so I'm not going through pages. Right, hang on. So that's brilliant. That's not sounding at all. Excellent. There we go. Now, what's going on with this is, right. So basically, MIDI A is doing the pitch of the oscillator, basically via CV. But then MIDI B is actually controlling the gate of the envelope. So without anything on the Now, the way I've got it, the MIDI B wired, is as well as it controlling the gate signal for like the main volume, basically, of the sound, I've also got the CV going into this, basically it goes into this thing, which is a math circuit, which then lets you split the signal a couple of times. And you can also attenuate the voltage of the signal. So basically, what I was trying to do is find a patch whereby I tend to like stuff that where, you know, I can have like one modulation source to like multiple targets. Like loads of the stuff I do in the box is like that as well, you know, like in like Massive or like whatever, you know. Basically, so I have like one modulation source and it's going to multiple targets. So I was like, trying to get my head around doing something like that in this. And this is as close as I've got to it yet, I think. So basically, the CV signal, the CV signal of MIDI B is actually mod wheel CC, right? And the reason for that is I wanted it to be like a continuous controller. So that way I can get this to like do LFOs inside of this, and then that LFO signal is basically sent to a couple of targets, right? Which are, let me get this right, the overtone control and also basically the time the time control of this extremely fast LFO called the slope. Basically, it's so fast that it kind of gets into like FM territory. So if I was to do just like, if I do just like one really long note of that, actually, we'll just open it up. So that's like 2 notes. So I could like put an LFO on that CC basically. Yeah, I mean it just kicks out utter filth basically most of the time. So yeah, that's it. I'm going into this. It's quite hard to make patterns for it, really, not knowing exactly what the sound is going to be when I come to play. But I'm quite enjoying that as well. So I'm just kind of like, I'm filling up all of these MIDI patterns with stuff and just trying to give myself as broad a kind of options as I can. And then when it comes to kind of playing it live, what I'll be doing is basically kind of pre-fade listening on that channel so I can hear what's going on first, and then basically capture a bit that I like and use the live looper on it to kind of make a bit that's decent. So I'm trying to make it like really, really live, sort of like, you know, like you hear it for a bit, you dance to it, blah, 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 and then it's gone forever. That is basically the idea of that. So yeah, the live looper is on here. So let's just have a quick look at that. So. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, as you can see, you get yourself into some decent sort of like, yeah, like noisy, like sort of techno vibes with that.
That analog synth sound, isn't it? It's that classic analog fat synth.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah. It really, you know, it's just really encouraged me to like just sit in the studio more. Basically, my missus might argue is not such a great thing, but anyway, it means that you know, yeah, it's good because it means that I'm actually forced to like, as I'm saying to you, you know, just like record it because then otherwise it's just going to go, you know.
Do you always use the live loop feature on the Octatrack? Do you ever play directly from that live in real time, or do you always record a section in and then loop it and play that in your set when you're performing?
Right, so that basically getting this is what inspired me to use. I hadn't actually used that before because I mean, there's this honestly, this thing does so much that like, there's probably a couple of things now that I don't use, but I do use most of the features of it, but I hadn't used it's called a pickup machine. So yeah, it's actually specifically for like, you know, like if you want to do like live looping performance, I've seen people do it where, I guess, yeah, I've seen people do it with like foot pedals as well, you know, so you can like, you know what I mean, like beatbox into it or whatever, and it'll match to the BPM of the loop that you've done and all that stuff. But the way I use it is it's obviously already playing when I activate it. You saw when I did it just then. So yeah, it's just, you can either...
So you're triggering patterns from that sequencer anyway, so...
Yeah, so I've basically, yeah, like I was saying to you, I've out of all of these channels, I've got so when I came to sort of make this bunch of patterns, all of the patterns have the same track numbering. So each pattern has got track 2 as the loop pickup machine, right? So it's like every single pattern has got that as an option at any point, basically. So I kind of made the template of the first one, and then just like copy pasting and putting different samples and stuff into the other patterns, if you see what I mean. That's just a load of fun. I mean, the other thing is you can see I'm only using input, the one of the inputs here, and there are 4. So I mean, I've considered actually, what would be just as much fun probably would be sampling this as well, you know, and like live looping the 303. But it's just that would take up more channels because you are limited to 8 channels. So that's it, you know, that's all you've got on this. So if you're going to do that, that's another 2 channels gone. Do you see what I mean? And that's the other thing. I think where I've sort of come from, like originally doing stuff, like because I've been making music since I was at school, in the early 90s, right? And there was that was like samplers that have, you know, 12 seconds of sample time or whatever, and so I quite like having limitations, you know, like because I teach people Ableton and stuff like that as well for a living, as well, and I often find that, you know, that's quite overwhelming in a way, you know, like that the capabilities of Ableton is basically what you would have spent, you know, what, 50 grand on a studio like 20 years ago. You've got that in your laptop, and like people are overwhelmed by that. They don't, you know, and so like imposing a creative boundary whereby it's like, this is what you've got basically, and now you're forced to like think around that problem, you know, and that in itself kind of yields creative results.
Well, Fatboy Slim said everybody needs a 303. You know?
Yeah. It's true. I mean, it's also, yeah, like V1 of my live set was an ESX one Korg. You know, the red one with anyway, it's got like valves in the top. That had 26 megs of sample time in it, right? So, you know, that I could get like 3-hour set out of that thing with 26 megs of sample time. And I was like down sampling my kicks to get more samples into it. Do you know what I mean? Like making all my kicks like 8-bit kicks just so I could like get more samples into it. So
yeah, that's where you get that 8-bit crushed sound.
Yeah. So, and that was the other thing, is it sounds great on kicks, you know, like kicks with like reduced like sample and bit rate, so like they sound really like, you know, they do the business. So again, it's like, you know, a sort of impassable boundary of like, this is as many megs as you've got. Now you've got to do something about that. But then that in itself yielded its own result, you know.
You don't feel like that Ableton, like you say, it's a plethora of options. So like, I suppose it's too many. Like, you don't know where to go creatively. So you think with this hardware-based setup, it's...
Well, yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, you know, it's an interesting point. I mean, you could do the same with Ableton, couldn't you? You could say, right, okay, I'm just going to limit myself to, all right. It could be anything. You could say, right, I can only use as a starting point this 2 seconds clip of audio. Right, there's your create banner. Or is it you can only use 5 channels? Or, you know, but you could go loads of places with that. You could build like a mega rack of like parallel process stuff of like, you know, it's just like, in itself, that's what I mean, is like, you know, that in itself would yield its own like creative rewards. Do you know what I mean? Because you'd be forced to do some stuff that you weren't like used to doing, and that is what that's the buzz for me, basically. Yeah, that is when it comes to electronic stuff, that's the buzz that I get from it. So yeah, so that's the O-Coast, that's the Octatrack triggering the O-Coast. The other thing that the Octatrack is triggering is this, which is my little MFB 522. So that is, you can think of it somewhere between a 606 and an 808, sort of. Like the snare sounds like an 808, the kick sounds like a bit of a heavier 606, and the hats are definitely very 606-y. But because it's a kind of, it's basically kind of a budget analog drum machine. I don't think they make them anymore actually, but it's all mini jack outs, which inevitably means that they're quite noisy when you start adding compression to them, which I quite like and sort of loathe at the same time, because what you don't want is like a channel that's up that's just got loads of hiss on it. So let me just show you that. So basically, those ones are, let's have a look here. So on my MIDI channels, I've got MIDI channel 1 is basically my dedicated like drum machine one, and if memory serves me correctly, you have to just, if I fumble around the mixer a little bit, it's normal. So basically, this first channel, again, I try to keep it the same in each of the patterns. So like the kick is here, so I just always know where it is. And then this will be like clap or snare. I don't even know what that one is. Nothing on that one. And there is, oh yeah, there's this clap. I think this should be hats, maybe. And that's just that. So what's going on with that is basically, you can see it's got a few separate outs, but I'm only using 2 of them. I don't know if any of you used many sort of like drum machines with got separate outs of them, but this one, basically, as soon as you plug in the one for the drum, it takes it out of the main. But the only one that I've separated out is the kick. And all of the rest, like the clap, the hats, the snare, the toms and everything, all coming out the stereo out. Can you hear that that's basically, yeah, that is like being compressed and distorted a bit, so it's got that slight noisiness to it. But they are being processed in here. So basically, MIDI for the drum machine comes from here, and then the processing of it is in the mono machine, right? So the mono machine is the first. That's the first electron bit of kit that I got. So as I was saying, like Mark, one of my live set was just ESX one, and I had a DX200 Yamaha as well. It's like a desktop FM synth. Mark II was when I just had like the Korg ESX and this, and what this is basically is a 6-part mono synth. So you can have 6 mono synthesizers, or again, which is often the case with the Electron stuff, they can also be instead processors as well, just audio processors. So the way that I'm doing it is, like in the past, I've had all of these 6 ones that I've all had like, this has got like a melody on it, and this has got like a bass line on it, and this has got some weird glitchy thing. But it's just like, I don't need 6 synths going off at once, do you know what I mean? I just don't. So what I've narrowed this down to is to have track 1 as like the mono machine's kind of like main synth bit. Then 2 is processing for it. 3 is the kick, I think. Yeah. And then 4 is processing for that if I want. And then 5 is like the tops basically. And again, so yeah, in fact, I'm only actually using one of the tracks for the synth, and as you can see, it's blessed with all of these outs basically. So as well as having 6 separate like modules, you've got 6 outs, which is great because it means that I've just got them. I can have like the MFB kick and 303. Ah, yes, I forgot to mention one thing. So this is where it gets a little bit even more convoluted. Why not? So basically, if I just show you this thing, you might notice this has got, weirdly, it's got something on it that's called mix in, right? I was thinking, what is that for when I first got it, actually? I was like, oh, it'd be really cool if that meant you could like put audio through the filter. You couldn't do that. But then I kind of, if something has a feature on it, a piece of kit that I don't really necessarily, it isn't obvious, I just want to use it. So I basically just, I've put the kick into the 303, and what it does is just mixes the kick and the 303 together, and then that goes into the mono machine. Now, why do that? The reason is actually, if you have like a short decay on the kick and don't have it as like I have at the moment, hang on, and we'll turn up the, because that's got a compressor on it, which is, I'm sort of peaking it out a bit there, I can hear, but basically you can get a sort of like faux kind of side chaining effects. Do you see what I mean? If you have the kick just on the one and a really short decay, and then you've got the 303 going, so you can sort of, with the compressor, it's like faux side chain kind of thing going on there. So yeah, that I mean, I don't have them always running together even, so I can just like turn this down or just mute off the kick on the MIDI channel here, if needs be, basically. Yeah, so that is basically, yeah, so the other key thing is, the 303 isn't being sequenced from here or the onboard one. I don't know if anyone here has ever tried to use a legit 303 before. Anyone? Yeah? How do you find sequencing that?
Oh, it's long.
It's long, isn't it? Yeah,
Clunky,
like
quite clunky, basic. It's not that flexible. It's all right as long as you stick to basic.
I know this guy who actually has been using it for years, and he can actually basically you have to do the pitches for this is a clone, but it's true to the original in terms of the sequencer. So that means number one, no swing. It's like, come on, like, and number two, you've got to program first of all the pitches, and then the rhythm, but by keying it with like quavers and semi-quavers, key presses like that. I know a guy who can actually do that from his brain because he's been seriously. You could actually like sing him a riff and he can do that. That's quite weird, like. But I'm not that guy. Chris Liberator. Yeah. He's that au fait with an original 303. He can do that. That's a skill. But yeah, it's not one that I possess. So I just want like nice, quick results when it comes. I like the sound of it, but I have actually filled it with a bunch of. Patterns actually. There probably are some all right. There's probably like. Hang on. I mean, yeah, but and that, you know, I've got a bunch of patterns in there, but I like swinging a lot of my beats, you know, like a bit of shuffle, and I can't shuffle it using the sequencer that's on board, which I just find annoying, really. So this is switched to MIDI mode. I originally started to try and program it off the Octatrack. But what you've got to think about when you're doing the programming for this is how you're going to get... You see when I press play there, before... Hang on. Let's just do that again. Oh no, let's not do that again. Let's just play it. Yeah, see how you're getting these accents and slides, right? So via MIDI implementation, to do that, you need the notes for a slide, you need the notes to overlap, so it's like legato, sort of portmanteau up and down to them. And to get the accents, it has to be a full velocity note, right? Now, for some reason, on the Octatrack, it's a right pain to get the overlapping notes. You have to put in a polyphonic note. Anyway, it was just like, I don't know why, I got to a certain point when I was just like, okay, I'm going to try it on here. And on here, it's like the quickest thing ever, basically, to program a 303. Like if I, let's just have what I'll do is I'll just copy my pattern so I can show you. So let's just make a new one. Right, so if I go into the MIDI sequencer here, you should... So basically that's it, that's the pattern that I've copied. If I just start putting my own one in, I should be able to... Why is it not triggering it? It's doing this earlier. I'm doing something wrong, obviously. Alright, let's just... Yeah, so you can see I'm getting the accents and slides there. So I could just, you know, you can just do it like so much quicker on here. Just like programming stuff is just, programming monophonic notes on here is really, really quick. So yeah, that's basically, that's triggering that, and then that's coming back into here again for processing, basically. Yeah, so I might as well show you some of the sequences I've been making. So basically, let's just have a little go, and I'll start off with the ones that I've got down here. So. No, sorry. I forgot to tell you about the monomachine synths. So yeah, so basically, inside of here, it's got a really, really amazing synthesis engine. It's actually my favourite synthesizer, I think, in many ways, because it's just that the way that it's coupled with the sequencer. It just, you can make stuff on it so quickly once you've got your head into it. So basically, it's got it's got a load of different synth engines. It's got like obviously like normal kind of subtractive ones like a saw wave, square wave, but then it's got ensemble versions of those, which mean that within one monophonic synth, you can have 4 voicings. So you can actually program each of the 4 voicings to do like chords basically in one monosynth, which is, I mean, is really easy to like program chords effectively in it. I should have one of those to show you actually. Let me just find that. So that's a bass, obviously. Here we go. Right, so yeah, that's just like one monosynth, right? And if you were to look at like the different steps on like the main page, you can see basically I'm changing like the 3 extra voicings you've got for each one. You can just like turn them. So basically, the other main brilliant thing about this synth is it's only got these 6 pages, right? Whereas this thing is brilliant, but it's like mired in menus, basically, because it does so much. You know, there is a lot of menu diving. Once you get used to it, it's fine. But in this one, there is none of that. There is only these 6 pages, right, to make a sound. So you've got like the main synthesis page, the amp page, filter, effects, and then 3 LFOs. So everything that you can see basically corresponds on the page. You've got like 8 different parameters controlled by these 8 encoders here. So I mean, you know, it's got so. Sorry, yeah. So basically, yeah, it's got subtractive like ensemble ones. Then it's got like a wavetable synth in it as well. And it's got an ensemble version of the wavetable synth. It's got a SID chip emulation. That's like great, basically. It's got 3 different FM engines. One's like a 3 operator. One's like there are 2 different kind of like 2 operator ones. And then you've got these. Basically, you've got like a voice synth. And yeah, and the effects processing, and like a sort of beat machine one that's just got like little drum samples in. Yeah, it's just really, really great. Like if you sort of like start from scratch, like basically if I just clear this one down, so okay, I'm just going to choose a new like FM engine for this. So we'll do stat. Alright, so I'll just show you how quickly you can get something going. Right, so I'm not really going to do it to a click or anything. So then if they're in the wrong place, you can now see these steps. I can just like move that to the 1 or whatever. Oh, it's transposed it. Okay, so then for each step you can basically just like start messing around. You can either record them in like automation. So my other thing that I really love doing on this is it's got like distortion and delay built into every machine, so you can basically get the LFOs to like just like automate distortion and stuff like that, which is really cool basically. Let's just. Yeah, so it's just like that was just like from scratch, obviously, and I mean, but you kind of get a feel for how quick you can kind of get stuff going on that.
In your live sets, how much do you like come up with on the spot?
Well, what I'll do is that they're quite a lot, really, I guess. Like I'll do a fair bit of recording in of my sort of like. I'll have sort of like the bare bones patterns that I want to kind of hold the whole thing together, but then it's kind of like how those bits then go together is kind of the fun bit. Do you see what I mean? So I have done in the past, and I will do for this one definitely, is have like a page of stuff that really would only really, I guess, make sense to me. That would be like, this pattern works with like this pattern on this one. And then it will like be, the pattern for the drums or whatever, you know, so that I can see how those bits go together. But then obviously, you know, when you're actually performing, you can just kind of like try stuff out as well, because it tends to all kind of sound like me anyway. Do you see what I mean? So it just kind of, the bits generally kind of fit together. I did, this time though, I am being more kind of like rehearsed about it than usual, because obviously I've got this thing which is like a total like you know, force of nature kind of thing. So I can just kind of like, I want there to be stuff that like works together and sort of underpins the chaos basically. I'd considered doing program changes actually. So like I've seen other people's live sets where they actually send like a program change from this box to that box, so it will like change with it, sort of thing. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that really, and also I don't know. I don't feel. I guess it could be annoying as well, because you might want to go back to a certain point on here, and it meant that I'd go back to the same point on that one as well. So I don't want to be tied to it in that way. I think I'd rather just settle for my sheet of just like numbers and letters and just go, oh, what's on the menu, kind of thing, you know.
Is this for your Overworks project? Or
Yeah, well, this is I've done the Ben Pest stuff before, but yeah, I've just kind of like I've just started out with the Overworks stuff as well. Yeah, yeah, this is definitely the setup for Overworks. Yeah, yeah. But I'm actually considering, you know, just doing stuff like that when I was just like live looping that one bit. Using the pickup machine means that, like I say, if you move on, it's gone. That's it. It's gone from the buffer, which is like, whew, okay, that is quite like I like that ethos, but at the same time, it's like a bit like, oh, I'm never going to hear that ever again. The other way you can do it is to have a record buffer machine inside it, where it's actually committing it to a file. But that means saving it on the fly. You can do it, but in live situ, what I'm going to start like naming stuff. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I don't know. Like,
when using the pickup machine, does like the buffer doesn't it keep the sample in the buffer even if you change?
It does. It does keep it in the buffer, but then the moment that it keeps it in the buffer per channel. So basically, it will have a buffer per channel, but because I want it to be the same channel on each pattern, that means if I change it and record something else, it's gone. I do like that idea though. I was watching a video of Surgeon, I think, and he was doing a similar thing with pickup machines in his modular rig. So it's like literally just like he plays a set off that, and it's just that's it. You just never hear the same kind of thing, which is kind of like, yeah, I do like it, but I'm still mourning the loss of that bit that I had going a minute ago. Where is it now? You know, oh, hang on, no, it's gone. Yeah, so that is kind of what I'm talking about, but I'm just going to embrace that basically.
I suppose if you're recording your set anyway, then
that's it. You know, that's it.
At least it's printed onto the recording of your.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that brings me on to recording. So basically, all the stuff I've been making recently has just been completely starting from here, right? So I mean, I am like an Ableton-based producer, but basically, I've got at home. It's like a Soundcraft. FX16.2, which is that basically it's a 16-channel mixer that's got 16 direct outs as well, and I've got a Motu 16A. So basically, I can record all the bits like multi into Ableton. Yeah, so that is basically how I'm making my stuff. But you see how I've got for example, those drums, like that I've got let's just find a different. Like say that, for example. So that is all coming out the main out, right? So that's like a kick and a bass and like a cymbal potentially, right? So that would all be baked into one stem, which you might think, well, hang on, that's a bit like limiting. And in a way it is, but then I quite like that as well, because if you think about it, I've done most of the stuff I put into here, right, is like produced loops from Ableton that are then put into here and I've applied more processing to, and then I've recorded it back into Ableton. So it's already had like multi-track treatment. At that point, if you start doing stuff like putting like I use Neutron quite a lot. Do you know that? Yeah. Yeah. So Neutron's just great, basically. And the dynamic EQ on that means if I start like, if it's like, oh, it hasn't got enough cymbal on it, but it was close, you know, then if I start using the dynamic EQ to bring that out, makes the kick sound nice as well, because it's had all of this, it's already had like 2-3 stages of processing, do you know what I mean? So, I guess, yeah, you've got a sort of like limitation there, but I quite like that as well, because it means you're just like, you're committed to it then, you know what I mean? There's no like going back and picking it apart. Or the other way round, if you were really concerned about it, what I do sometimes is I like record out individual. So once I'm jamming the track into Ableton or whatever, then I'll just like mute everything apart from the kick. So I've got a couple of hits of that, right? And then I've just got a couple of hits of the cymbal or the hi-hat or whatever. So if it really is that much of a problem, by the time I come to like mix it, I can sort of just reconstruct that multi-track according to the jam that I've done, which is quite convoluted really, but there you go. I'm used to doing it that way. Yeah, so yeah, that's oh yeah, the other thing was on here, so if we go back to that one that had like a bass noise in it, where's that gone? No, not that one, here we go, I think it's this one. Nope. Oh, brilliant, have I lost it? Amazing. I think I've actually gone over it. Over the only one I wanted to play you individually. Brilliant. Of course. I've got it somewhere else. Yeah, I'm a hoarder for stuff, by the way. It's like if I come in, I'm going to demo it. I've got a copy of that pattern somewhere else in there. So I was like, okay, it's all right, it's not gone. But yeah, so on this stuff, like I was showing, you can like put an LFO on basically anything on these. So so some bass noises, what I've started to do is use like an exponential down LFO on the amp, which is triggered every quarter note. So again, that makes a sort of faux sidechain effect. Do you see what I mean? A sidechain is just basically you're just dipping the volume or something. That's it, right? So if you're doing that around the kick area, you can get the same effect basically, just doing that with an LFO. So yeah, there, as I say, there's loads of different like ways round doing stuff basically. Yeah. So God, I've been talking for ages, haven't I? Shall I just play you a few bits and bobs? What's the deal? Let's see. Oh yeah, so I've got this. The other thing I've been trying to do is to get patterns that are doing a bit of kind of call and answer. So, I mean, what I'm sure you can appreciate is, I've got all of these things that generate sound. And so I find that I have to like rein myself in a lot, because I'm, if you listen to my stuff, it's really like rolling, and there's always like, there's like every like 16th or whatever's got something in there. But I'm quite like deliberately trying to rein that in at the moment. So instead of, just being really brutal about it and just saying, well, actually what I want to do is just take a couple of notes out of that one and then a bit of space and then a bit of that one. You see what I mean? So it's like making space for myself a little bit. Because you can get, let me play you that. Yeah, this is prime example, right? like basically what you can do with this, which is really good, is even though you've got you're limited to, like, you know, you might think, oh well, one channel that can only be the kick drum, right? So that's a bit rubbish. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've only got 8, so that. But no. What you can do is you can actually lock the individual steps to switch sample slots. So this is if you were to look at this, you can see there are 2 slots playing, but actually all the sound is just coming out of track 3, and it's being processed through 4. But if you listen to this little riff. So that's like loads of different, like, little chops from different sample slots, and in that you can like change the start point of where they play and the rest of it. I think it's got a variation somewhere. And then later on, when I started, so then I was like, oh, well, what happens if you, with that one, like, for example, this is all playing the samples, that's all playing those sample parts forwards, right? What happens if you play them all backwards and you get a completely different result? Yeah, I mean, it's just like, what? But this is just like kicking out like random, you know, stuff. And my approach to it is basically just embrace the random, basically, and then you just like cherry pick from that. Do you know what I mean? That is basically how I make stuff. I try to like not really. It's very rare unless I'm doing something very specific that I sit down and I'm like, oh, I've got this idea in my head, I'm going to do it like this. That doesn't happen, you know. I just throw a load of stuff down, and then some of it sticks, basically, and then the bits that work, it's just like, oh, right, sweet, use that. The other thing that this does, which the ESX1 did as well, which is something that, this is something, if Ableton could do something like this, right, I would just be like, wow, that'd be so cool. But basically, what you can do with this is, so you can do load of chopping, load of slicing, load of like craziness to a sound, right? And then today I was like, well, what would happen if I don't completely, when I'm making this new set, right? I don't just wipe the box, I just wipe the samples, right? And I put other samples into those sample slots. So basically at that point you've got like this sequence stuff that was made for another sound that just like goes off and like does stuff to it, you know. Like stuff from the other, I'm going to do it to like stuff like this, right? For example, this is from the old set. I'm just going to solo the bit that I want. That's like a comb filter on an Amen or something. Why is that so distorted? Let's just sort that out. Hang on, let's try a different one. Yeah, there we go. There we go. This one is better. it's like basically that's the comb filter, like making a pitch. So you can pitch the comb filter on it. I like to make like riffs or whatever. But that's obviously that's got like an aim and break in it. But I'm just gonna like, well, hey, just swap it out, see what happens if I stick like, stick a think break in it instead, or just like whatever, So that's it. It's like, and then obviously I don't have to use all of that. Then I can just use a part of it, or I could just use like a few bars of it, or like a whole bar of it, or whatever, So yeah, that's very, very much my approach to this, really. But like, you can't do that in Ableton, You can't. I suppose you can. I suppose you could like replace a whole audio track. But it's like, you can't. I suppose you could actually. You could like stick another sample in, if you did like a load of glitching out in like sampler or something. Would that work? I've never tried. I'm gonna try that now. Yeah. So.
But it's just the interface on that device. Do you think that makes it particularly? It lends itself to.
It does. Yeah. It does. It does.
Okay,
Like. Yeah.
Like it. I guess one of the reasons.
Yeah, well, it's just basically everything that you've got to work with is just like a list of samples that you put in there. That's it. It's just like, that's it. That's what you've got to work with. So it's quite easy to just like replace that list, and that would just change everything that you did to put inside the box,
So how do you load the samples? Is it on compact flash?
Yeah, so it's got a compact flash, like one of those chunky ones. So that's like a 64 gig one in there, and it's just got like a USB on it.
A fairly significant amount of space then, so you can load it with.
Oh yeah,
whatever
64
you like.
gigs.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. So that's not limiting at all, is it? So
no, like as I was saying, you can play full tracks off it. I've seen people do that. I just can't see the advantage over. I can't see the advantage over doing that instead of a CDJ, quite frankly, But then I suppose it's still a live set, then, isn't it? That's why people do it. Hey,
there's a guy called Plante who does like all that kind of stuff. He has like Akai APL or something like that. But it's like it looks kind of like an APC.
Okay.
And he plays like whole tracks off of that, where he basically does switch like through tracks and glitches them and stuff like that. So you could do it like that. And
You could, and I've seen people do it and like literally use this as a sort of DJ crossfader. Because this thing, you're seeing me like do weird glitchy stuff with it, but it can do anything. It can do something as simple as fading. Literally, this track is down. Say this track is down when it's on this side, and then this track is whatever up when it's on this side, and then in the middle you're crossfading, and that's it. That's like using like a DJ mixer, or you could have them all as pickup machine loopers doing that, and just like I've seen people use this in we're going to start using this in our band actually, so we've already got we already incorporate my mate Tom's one into our band, which is like a 7-piece band. So it provides click track to the drummer, and then like extra like jammy bits on top and like a sort of backing track-ish type thing underneath the band. But then what we're going to do is have a second one that will actually have inputs from like mics from the brass section, stuff like that. Having the second one is just like live looping pickup machine or whatever, So yeah, there's just loads of different ways you could use it really. Right, what else have I got on here? Let's have a look. Up here there's some stuff. Sorry, wrong bank. That's the other thing. Haha. So the other thing you can do, the other thing that I've been making are sample chains, right? And I'm actually thinking about doing this for like everything now. because it just makes, you know how you just spend ages like in Ableton like going through kicks in your sample library or going through claps or whatever, and there's going to be loads and loads that you've got that you just don't ever use, and there's a bunch of them that you use a lot basically, right? I don't know about you, but that's what I do. So what I did then was take the ones that I use a lot and then process them up in Ableton, and then just made, in this case, I'm going to start making longer ones, but chains of 8 samples, one after the other, in 100, evenly spaced to 120 BPM, so they're 2 beats long each, right, on every 2 beats. And it's just one file that's got like the 8 kick drums that I use loads. And that's it. And so in here, you can then say, well, hey, I want to split that into 8 equal parts. And then while I'm playing that kick, yeah, so that's just like great, you know, and I could, you know, I'm going to start doing that with all of my drums. So I just have like sample chains for claps, sample chains for like hi-hats. Why not just have like one file that you could just use for everything, you know, rather than just wasting loads of time going through, I don't know, whatever sample libraries that you don't use like 99% of. You know, I don't know. Do you guys use many samples, or like how do you make your drums? That's my question to you. How?
I just drop audio into. I don't use it. Just enables it. I don't use the drum rack or anything.
Okay, so you have it on a channel or whatever.
Yeah, just have it on a channel.
But do you just use like what do you start with though? Is it like a
Just a kick, I guess, or just.
But is that the one that you've made, or is that one that you've
No,
like?
just from a sample pack.
That's what I mean. Yeah. But you probably use the same one quite a lot.
So much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've a little folder of all my drums that I've made.
Yeah.
Just like literally the whole channel or the whole like say group, and then I'll just drop that in.
Yeah. Okay.
I can just change it out a little bit. So.
And so do you? So then do you have like a sort of a template of like, you know, like a track that you make? Then is it like?
Kind of, yeah. Sometimes if I'm being really really lazy, I might drag in some drums that I might have from another track if it's on the same EP or something.
Yeah. But that's just standard, isn't it? Like, I mean, everyone does that.
Go into and be like, oh, I have the kick here again, and blah blah blah.
Yeah. I mean, I find that listening to loads of people's tracks is like, hang on, they are really good tracks, or like even really sound designy like produced ones. It's like, hey, I've heard that snare before. Like, oh, I swear, it's just like that one's just got a bit of EQ rolled off that, you know.
Some people really don't like people using the same drums in every track, and they're just like, oh, you're being, I don't know, not creative.
Yeah, well, I used to be really like hardcore about like making everything myself, but I'm sort of like, I'm less bothered about that now. I just want to kind of get stuff done, and so.
Forever on a kick drum.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, so especially, but I don't know. I think it's quite good as well to have like consistency in the sound as well in that way. So, you know, that is what you're aiming for in terms of like a performance anyway, isn't it? You don't want it to be like too like all over the place sort of thing. Yeah, so yeah, hang on. Can you hear that slight kind of like crispiness to the cymbals on that, right? So it's got a bit of basically a bit of like sizzle kind of thing. So what I've done on this one is I kind of baked a bit of that in using like a send and just a bit of like extra distortion on the ride. But then in some of these up here, what you'll see is on my master channel, it's got, like I was saying, it's got like a bit of like low end and high end processing, and then basically a tiny bit of distortion, and it just, you don't want too much. It's on like the main out master that, but if I take it off, and it's kind of like there's a sweet spot. As that was almost too much when I heard it again just now, but it's like if you could get like, especially with like techno or something, you want a bit of that, but like not too much of it, basically. The other great thing about this is while it's playing, like I just totally changed that, right? Like if I do loads of changes to this, and just like I've messed with that loads now, but you can just go into it and say, right, I just want you to basically reload that part, and so you do that on the fly. Like you do that with both of these boxes as well. So like
you do often, is it?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you get to a place that you're not happy with, or you just want to go back to where you were, you can just reload the machine you were working on. Just like I mean, literally, it could be like halfway through a beat, and it just does it. It just does it seamlessly, basically. So these are made for that. You know, they're made for like live performance, basically. I don't know is there anything I haven't covered, do you think, sort of like about how it works, or like any questions? Because I will have a little jam sort of at the end, but like
do you cue stuff up in pre-fade listen and compose things, you know, without it coming out of the main out?
Yeah.
In just the headphones, and then you know, audition it in the headphones before you play it out, or will there be occasions where you just go for it and put it out in the front of house?
Yeah.
Without worrying about, you know, preparing it in.
It's a really good point, that as well.
How do you approach that?
So the new set is going to be less of that, because I used to be all about doing that. Like just get it in, and that in itself has its own sort of like energy to it. But having said that, they would all be, you know, they wouldn't be patterns that I just made on the fly. There'd be stuff that I'd pre-sequenced,
So
that I just kind of but I mean I probably hadn't put those two bits together before, so I just kind of like wham it in and just like, yeah, great kind of thing. But the key with doing that is to do it with commitment and just not too loud. Like basically that's the thing, is that you can get in a live set, you can get away with quite a lot of stuff that is kind of like not necessarily planned, but you just have to like just make, yeah. So I guess just using the pre-fade listen, or just looking on the mixer to make sure that that's not going to be like rah, do you know what I mean, when it comes in. But yeah, like I was saying, the new one is going to be more of you know, kind of stuff which is like rehearsed underpinning it, and then this is going to be enough for me to think about in terms of like getting something going in the pre-fade listen. I mean, I could even be doing some like on the fly programming with that, because that could be quite a fun thing to do, I think, when it's, you know, when it's all running. So yeah, I mean, you could even like, yeah, thinking about it, you could even get something going that you like, then use the pickup machine all in pre-fade listen, get a loop out of it, and then bring that in, you know.
I think that's something you do.
That is something that that's something I've been getting into doing, basically. So
Is that particularly because your the analog synth is so wild to tame that you fit?
yeah, I mean,
have to make sure
yeah. I mean, it's like.
you can sound about what you do. So,
Yeah, I mean, you kind of like you turn a few bits and bobs. Basically, the key I think with it is just having, like I say, a bunch of sort of like modulation possibilities with it, and then yeah, it's like because of the nature of, like, if I just show you again, right, on this thing, let's just have a little listen to what it's doing now. So yeah, that, because basically all of that the pitch you're getting out of it with this patch is from modulation wheel CC, as opposed to concert pitch, 50 cents in each direction or whatever. So you just get into much more like atonal like stuff, basically. So, when it's stuff like that, there is no kind of right or wrong in a way. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like so obviously atonal that you just like, yeah, just kind of, you can like, even with this patch. Yeah, so like even with this slope thing, basically, even just changing the sort of the position of the rise and fall, I don't know if you can kind of make it out, but like it actually changes like the rate of the LFO there. You see that flashing more slowly? That is basically what is creating those pitches in it. Yes.
How do you sort of go about balancing that like experimental futuristic side with the 303 in like a live setting?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of patterns that are more kind of spatial. Let's try and find them actually. Just give me a moment. So what? Yeah, it's about not filling all of the gaps, basically. So with this one, I'm just going to find the two patterns that I need, because I've been kind of playing with them a bit. That one. That one. Okay. Let's see where my 303 is. Okay, so that's that one sorted, and I've got to just have a look at what's going on. Let's make this much shorter. see what I mean? So basically, that's like the three kind of main synths of it, kind of doing a bit of like call and response, kind of. That is the sort of thing I'd be going. So it's a case of really watching like the decays of notes, because like this basically you can have it really short and like plucky, or like obviously if I've got the decay all the way up, that'll go on forever. So yeah, you can create a lot of space by just like adjusting that basically. Yeah. So yeah, that is what I want to get going on basically. So that it's like them kind of feel like they're talking to each other a bit more, that kind of thing. I mean, if I put a yeah, and I mean that the other thing is I've kind of got like baseline options like abound basically. Do you see what I mean? So I've got one here. The other thing that this does actually is it does the pickup machine. You can do overdubbing as well, which is quite interesting. So that, I mean, obviously you can set like how many steps you are gonna like loop. In the case of that particular one, that's like an 8-step one, as opposed to maybe what it might like be 16 usually or something like that. You can make them uneven steps if you want, so you can make it like 7 for like crazy like polyrhythm stuff. But then by default, when you start sampling, what you actually get is like an overdub thing. No, just take that reverb off. Right, so. So get into some serious like, but I mean it wouldn't have to be like as extreme as that. I suppose you could just have like stuff that was like just little really small changes and just have that kind of grow. If you sort of set it to if I actually let's do that. Let's set it to like a weird number of steps. So we'll do 12. Right, let's try that. Yeah, so you can have it, which I didn't realise I even had it in, was like you can have it playing forwards and then backwards as well. Let's just try doing it less actually. Let's try doing like an odd number, 7. So I suppose that's the other thing is sort of getting to grips with how you have the pickup machines set for each pattern as well, because they could all be set to like you could have basically the same pattern, but then each of say 4 could be different like step numbers you have the pickup machine set to. You know, it's just like loads of different ways you could have it basically. Yeah.
Could you play us like a long continuous
Sure.
section of music for 10 or 15 minutes or so?
Absolutely.
So we can get an idea
Yeah, let's do it.
of how it is in
Yes, so what I'll do just before I do that is I will just going to reload my parts. In fact, I want to. Yeah, that should be right. All right, so let's just start here, and I'm going to start at the beginning here. All right, so. Let's just check whether the machine's working. Oh, you can slide parameters as well. So instead of them being locked to the steps, Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, everybody.
Cheers.
It's been fun. Thanks a lot. Cheers. So that's how I put my live set together, and a few of the techniques I do in its creation. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much.